It's another commit for Bill Self and KU. Trent Perry, a 7'1" wingspan of a wing, coming in to join the Jayhawks. We break down his commitment, second in the class of 2026 for KU, on today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is a bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks as Trent Perry is officially a Jayhawk, continuing the long line of, famous Perrys in the state of Kansas. Of course, there's Perry Lecompton High School, Perry Ellis, and now we get Trent Perry joining the fold. We're going to be breaking it down, his game, scouting report, look ahead to the roster next year, and more on today's bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode, including our double days, where we have multiple episodes here on Locked On. So the news of the day, Trent Perry, a four-star recruit in the class of 2026, has committed to Kansas under Bill Self. He is a wing from Dallas, Texas originally. Now he plays in Branson, Missouri, going to Link Academy, when he chose KU over Maryland and TCU in the end. You look at the rankings on this kid, he's just outside the top 100 on national rankings. Certainly you would say that Bill Self has had some success with guys who are just outside the top 100 or right around their ranked players from the I guess at least nearby-ish area when you think of recent wings with Christian Brown and Ochai Agbaji. Different player here, but, point being he has had some success there. But this just keeps the momentum going too. When you have Talon Kinney commit over the weekend this past Sunday, and you're trying to fill out the class, you're trying to do it in different ways. You're trying to get different positions of players. You're trying to get, different types of guys in terms of, okay, maybe Kinney's more of the one and done type of guy. Maybe Perry's more of the program type of player, and try to build as solid of a recruiting class as you possibly can in that regard. And I do think that is something with Perry where, he does profile to being more of a longer term guy than Kinney, right? Like with Kinney, you're probably expecting a one and done or a two and done. With Perry, I guess I never lose sight in some of these classes. Like I always think back to that class of 2013 when you brought in Andrew Wiggins and Joel Embiid, and clearly the impact on basketball they've had after their time at Kansas with the NBA and everything is spoken for itself. And they did, had a lot of fun games when they were at Kansas. But if you're talking about the most impactful player, I guess you could say it still would be one of them in terms of how did that help them in recruiting down the road. But if you're talking about the most impactful on the court for Kansas, it wasn't Wiggins or Embiid or Selden, who were the most impactful of the recruits in that class. It was actually the guy who was the lowest ranked in Frank Mason wound up being the most impactful for the University of Kansas. So I never lose sight of that when this class of 2026 right now is rolling, and it feels like it's going to be even more rolling for Bill Self and company. Don't lose sight of the guy that, maybe he's ranked a little bit lower than the other players, because sometimes those end up being the ones who stay a little bit longer in college and become kind of the folk heroes that you have at KU. But regardless, you want to balance a class with, possible one and dones, guys you can continue building on for multiple years. And if Perry ends up being a one and done too, great, because that means that he had a great season and that you're going to have a lot of talent on next year's roster if that were the case. And the fact that he supposedly has a 7'1" wingspan, I think also continues kind of a trend of what Bill Self has been recruiting these, last 2 years now that you look at it on when you look at the portal this year, when you look at high school recruiting, and I guess if you would add Flory Badunga to that, and now high school recruiting class of 2026, like it feels like Bill Self is really leaning toward athleticism, really leaning toward wingspan, really leaning toward length and things that you can't really teach. I think that he is, he had a couple teams here that weren't his most athletic or weren't his longest teams. And I don't think he wants to get back to that point. And I think you see that with this edition of Perry. Let's get more into his game, though, with his scouting report, as well as a look at the 2026 to 2027 roster that Bill Self has getting ready to be built for him. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Mazda. And with Mazda, maybe you can drive a Mazda out and go see one of the games with Trent Perry because he's nearby if you're in the area. But Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's bonus episode of the show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch's built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch's for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. They've got it all color-coded too, so it's easy to kind of see everything. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Again, bonus episode, Trent Perry, 4-star wing, committed to KU. So what does he bring to the table? What is his scouting report here? Well, he is a 6'4", 190-pound small forward, reported again 7'1" wingspan by 24/7 Sports. He is ranked 105th on the 24/7 Sports composite, where he is the number 37 small forward in the class. For Mocan Elite, which is, that's, I don't know, DeJuan Harris, Ochai Agbaji, Christian Brown, like the Missouri and Kansas kids. That's where you get Mocan out of this. You end up with 8.3 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game in the summer. From some of the highlights that you watch, you see a power athlete. You see a very good athlete. You see a powerful one. He's able to get up. You see the long arms where it looks like he could tie his shoes standing up almost. Like a lot of dunks, a lot of transition game. Long arms lead to a lot of steals. The most impressive highlight that I saw was there's one in like the main highlight package where a guy is just trying to like pass it up the court and he's like right on him and he just jumps up and he can't get it over him. It's like trying to throw it through the Amazon and he just catches it and it leads to a steal and a run out the other way. So very impressive player in some of that area. Didn't really see anything in the highlights in like the half court, which I think probably makes sense based on the scouting report that I'm about to read. From Adam Finkelstein of 24/7 Sports. I'm not going to read everything, but here's a couple excerpts. Makings of an elite role player. Broadly built, high shoulders, long arms, 7'1" wingspan. Undersized for a true wing, plays bigger, no problem bodying up with bigger players because of toughness and physicality. So you're talking about a tough player, long arms, like physically everything that Bill Self can want. But it says, not always a high volume scorer, can get inefficient when trying to force his individual offense, but able to factor in transition, cutting, and occasional straight line driver. Does need to make strides with shooting. This is the, I guess, a little bit of red flag here. Just 7% from three and 46% from the free throw line in the EYBL. Now, EYBL, that can be, one tournament, right? That can be a small sample size of things, but clearly those are things that need work. Overall, Perry is trending towards a valuable blend player who values the team, has defensive versatility, a high motor, and increasing willingness to play within himself offensively. Doesn't that just sound like a Bill Self guy? He's going to be a good team player. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to be tough. He's going to play good defense. He's going to be good in transition. Sounds like a Bill Self guy. Now, I think what's going to determine, obviously, as you get to that shooting, whether he becomes a star at Kansas, an all-conference player at Kansas, versus just being kind of a role player that comes in to be a defensive stopper and provide some energy. The difference between those two things is just where the shot goes and what you get, kind of from the offensive side if you're Trent Perry. But I do find it interesting because you see the Maryland offer in there, and Buzz Williams, if you've paid any attention to how he's been playing, like when he was at Texas A&M, now he's over at Maryland, they basically play a style that's very rugged. They are going for like athletes who are going to crash the glass and rebound. You look at the TCU offer, and I don't know if you remember Micah Peavy, who was at Texas Tech and then went to TCU, and kind of this athletic like wing who was a good defender and offensive rebounder and stuff, but the shot never really came around. If we're making KU comps, I'm sure you're going to see some people like say Marcus Garrett. I don't know if I totally buy into that one. I mean, let's not forget, like Marcus Garrett led KU in assists during the 2019 to 2020 season. Garrett could at least shoot a little, though that was at the end, though, teams were still sagging off of him. Honestly, Perry probably has a bigger wingspan than Garrett, but also Garrett, what made him so special, part of it was his defensive IQ. And not to say Perry doesn't have good defensive IQ. I'm sure he does, but like Garrett was like the 99th percentile of it, right? And he had unbelievably quick hands. So I just don't like comparing guys to him in terms of he was just like a freak at what he did. Is this this might scare some people, so I don't mean to mean it that way, but like, is this kid a 3 version of KJ Adams? Maybe, but maybe with a little bit more potential of the 3-point shot. Because if he can be even just 28 to 30% from 3, where you at least have to respect it and he can do it, like that's probably enough. But again, if he becomes a good 3-point shooter, you're talking about a potential really, really, really good player here. But at the very least, be a stopper, get rebounds. Maybe he can even play some small ball 4 if you're playing like 4 guards out there because of the 7'1" wingspan. It just makes the rest of the ball like roster build unique and important. But you got to find role players in recruiting as well. And this is somebody who could be that with potential because of the wingspan to be, kind of even more in the athleticism as well. All right, let's take a look at that 2026 to 2027 roster. This is Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There's certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of your home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Silas and Maddie's uses Square. You probably like ice cream. Square's a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of the show. So what does that 2026 to 2027 roster look like for KU? Well, just from a identity perspective, you're looking at something where, I don't know, it feels like this team is going to be very built on wingspan and athleticism, not too dissimilar from this year's team. But you look at Taylon Kinney and Marco Jackson, obviously you are having some assumption which players are going to improve, which players are going to come back, which players aren't going to have a chance to go to the NBA. You never totally know how things are going to go, but like I do, as I've said before, like the backcourt of Kinney and Jackson. You're looking to the wing, just Cole Rosario as a sophomore, that could be a really intriguing player for you. So I could really like that 1 through 3. And then you could have like a big man lineup of Paul Mbia, Bryson Tiller, if you want to play 2 bigs, or maybe Smeeze Calderon at the 4 and one of those guys at the 5. And now you could possibly have this, like, here's the thing. I don't expect Trent Perry to come in right away and play 25 minutes per game, but if the defense is that good and his wingspan allows him to be a very helpful player in at least a couple categories, like whether it is rebounding, transition, or defense, he's at least going to be playing like 5-10 minutes a game. Like Bill Self was, remember KJ Adams' role as a freshman, right? It was like he's going to throw in 5 minutes here just to be like a defensive stopper. I could see that being Trent Perry as a freshman. And then by the time he's a sophomore, junior, he is playing like a big role on the team. So, this isn't just about building for 26, 27. When you add a player like Trent Perry, it's about building to the years after that as well. So, fun, intriguing addition here with Trent Perry and now 2 commits in the class of 2026 for Bill Self and KU. Make sure to check out our Taylon Kinney episode if you didn't already, and we'll see you next time for another edition of Locked On Jayhawks.